Hello and welcome to another Less Matters trainer interview. This month, we are joined by one of the most kind and knowledgeable, probably one of the most altruistic people that I know. A mentee of mine, although I wouldn't call him a mentee anymore, more of a friend and fellow certified large-scale Scrum trainer, the one and only Dinesh Sharma. Hello, Dinesh.
Hey Ben,
How are you today?
I'm good. Sun is shining, so yeah, good.
Yeah. We can pretend that this is summertime when this podcast goes out, and we're absolutely not recording this in February at all. So we
Of
are
course, yeah,
absolutely we're in the
true,
midst
true.
of summer.
Yeah, you can expect I'm not wearing a jumper at the moment, so it's just like only cool t-shirt. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. I've got a tan. I've got shorts on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's definitely summertime, and not at all like it's going to be a frost tonight. Anyway, Dinesh, it's so nice to have you here. I feel that we've been on quite a journey together for the last few years, and to get
True.
the opportunity to ask you these questions and I suppose get to know your opinions or refresh my memory on your opinions of some of these things is something that I'm really looking forward to. I know that everyone listening is going to enjoy hearing it too. But before we get into the meat of it, would you like to give everyone a little overview of who you are, where you've come from, and your areas of expertise and enjoyment?
Sure. My name is Dinesh Sharma. I am one of the certified less trainer. Um, I have been in this industry professionally since 1996, makes it around 26 years. But I have been building products way before that. Since I was in school, I got loved with I got introduced a computer very early in my school days, and since then I have loved it so much. I mean, my first computer did not have a hard disk, take it this way, so I got that back. I learned most of the stuff on my own by book. That time there was not many. I mean, unless you are a computer science student, you couldn't learn much. And so most of these things I learned myself. Programming language started with as basic language. Started with basic Pascal, moved on to C, C++, and did a lot of um, uh, experiments. Um, and But professionally, I started in 1996. Um, it's funny that I have hardly worked in any waterfall environment since then. My first job was in a hospital to build a hospital information system, and there were three of us who were building it, which means we did not have a very large team, right, or many people. And my first professional experience was directly going to the users, asking them about their problem, coming back, building something, going back again, showing them something, and then improve it. And I say I was a full stack developer because I was part of designing the entire network design of that hospital. I build system which interface with the hardware. Then I was, I think, second or third person in India at that time. I'm from India, who actually installed Unix or Oracle on Oracle, implemented RAID 5, which means that if your server, one of your hard disks fail, and if you have five hard disks, you can just plug one out and plug in, and then system doesn't fall off. So that experience helped me a lot, and I think probably that was the most agile experience I ever had. Take it this way. I mean, it could go that I can go to talk to a user five times in a day, and they could come and then see what I've built. Right? There was nothing else in between. Take it this way. Then I came in UK in 2003. Sorry, 2000, and worked with few company, and then I got introduced to XP in 2003. when I joined lastminute.com. It was not even said extreme programming. It was more, hey, we write unit test cases, we have continuous integration, so continuous integration. And then I got introduced to test-driven development there, and we built upon that, pair programming and all those things. So, but still, it wasn't like there was no word popular agile as such, right? And but I built upon that, got introduced to Scrum in 2007, and from 2010, I've been helping organizations. But as I said, that I have there was one project I'm calling a project, but we were building a product ERP where I was supposed to go and for 3 months to capture requirements. I was sent there. So two of us, one of my colleagues went with me. And when we came back after 3 months, we had actually implemented the system there and there itself. So it was like, that's the only way I know is that talk to you, build something, show you, right? That was my experience. And my boss was very angry with me because that's supposed to be 9 month project and we finished in 3 months itself.
Well, when you went to capture the requirements, did you have like a big net or some kind of elaborate trap or something? Like, how did you? I mean, you might. I'm assuming I can just see you walking around in camouflage in a forest somewhere, laying bait for these requirements to come out, so you can like jump on them. Have I got the right mental picture there, Dinesh?
It's funny because that time there were other people who were also captured. So we were building an ERP for a cement plant, very large cement plant, and I went for the financial accounting part, right? And then one of my colleagues, she went for understanding human resource department. And when she came back, she had a document of 400 pages capturing everything. And when I came back, I had an implemented system. And I was so confused because I was thinking that I must have missed so many things because I did not build a 300-page document, right? So I was literally it's not a joke, I was very apprehensive that how would I face my boss, right? And but surprisingly, they liked it because they had been implementing a sales and marketing system for last 18 months, right? And so yeah, it was funny. It was funny, but yeah. So I could picture everyone else going on to that hunt, a bear hunt, but and I was like, why is it so complex?
Yeah, my many years as an analyst, stalking and hunting requirements
Yeah.
had its perks, but I'm not sure I want to repeat it. What I find interesting is that you have some experience in XP, and I did a conversation with Rowan Bunning, Scrum
Yeah.
with Style, and apart from getting me up at 5 a.m. to do it, which I wasn't bitter about at all, thank you, Rowan. He started off a small talk developer, being taught TDD very early on, kind of got exposed to XP as well, and his journey towards less reminded me of what you were saying with your journey towards where you've got to. And it's the same with a number of different people that I've spoken to in the less community. There seems to be this real strong underpinning of having been a programmer at some point and maybe finding XP. So was it that experience then when you saw less that made you think, well, hold on, this seems to work quite well? Or what was it that got you into less?
No. So actually, less chosen me rather than I chose less because in 2010, when I was working with Sita, we had been building a product and and we were getting a lot of success. So that was purely Scrum and XP together, started with the two teams, and then we were growing team. And I had no clue how to work with multiple teams. And then for the organization, it was the first Scrum experience, the real Scrum experience, right? We tried to be very particular about it. And then I said, how does multiple team works in Scrum, or how should they work it? And I used to, and the only source of information was going internet and finding out, right? I had read the Martin Fowler books, Refactoring, and those. So I was promoting XP in the company, but it was very difficult for me to see how the multiple teams should work together. And then we have this element of we must use our offshore partner for some reasons. And so I came across the book by Craig and Buss, Scaling Lean and then Practices. But I read the second book first because I was looking for practices rather than anything else first. So
No,
I
same here.
started so I started reading that, and then I remember while we were growing, I was um, I was sending people on Scrum courses, CSPO courses, and my boss said, "Why don't you go on one of the courses as well?" And I went to Gabriel Benefield CSPO course, and I took the head of product with me also in that one, and we were talking about the book, and she said, "I heard it's a very good book," and so a lot of my learning came from that. I literally, it was like a textbook implementation that I tried to do there. Say, oh, this is what Craig was saying. Let me experiment with that, and I always saw that as an experiment, right? We introduced acceptance test-driven development through that. We did okay, test-driven development was there already. We had multi-team uh, learning together how multiple teams should work. So that way, so it's almost like I said that I have never worked in the waterfall. When I started working in agile environment, this is how I learned actually how the multiple teams should work together and still keeping things simple. I think that was sold to me when I started reading, saying it does make a lot of sense, and but that was the first um, uh, that was the first um, connection with the less from me. And then when I experimenting with those things, majority of experimentation worked with me, and not only just the with the two teams. Gradually, we built 20 teams there, but and we had multi-site. So there were a lot of advice from there. So I followed that advice, and that's how I uh, engage with less. Before it was officially called less. I mean, it was always called large scale Scrum in those books, but less was not born that. So I'm pre-less era of
Mm.
of using less.
I find it fascinating how similar our journeys are, even to the point of I also went on Gabby Benefield's CSPO. And it was in the CSPO that I asked her to introduce me to Buzz and Craig.
Ah,
And then I ended up, yeah, that's where my less trainer journey kind of got to a very slow, sputtering start. I also found out when I was in that CSPO with Gabby, I got a telephone call halfway through the first day to tell me that the business line who we were supporting at Royal Bank of Scotland had been cancelled. So when I returned, there was no longer a product to own. I said, okay, but I might as well carry on the course. It's paid for. I was told not to worry, but it was hard not to worry. But it's interesting how similar the journeys are,
yeah,
actually,
of
because
course.
I was recommended the big book by a gentleman called Sean Smith,
Okay.
and because of Sean's recommendation, then I ended up running little experiments at RBS as well. So it's fascinating how similar some of our stories
Yeah,
are.
yeah, true, true, true. And I think since then um, so it's funny that I had never seen that as a scaling kind of stuff. It was just that how the multiple teams should work together. How do we still keep things simple? How do we bring everybody into the journey? So that 2 years of experimentation in CETA was fantastic because it was not just about the team, it was about the customer, bringing the customer in your transformation. If you have a partner, offshore partner, how do you bring them into the journey also? And then almost like creating an environment of transparency where people feel that they all are working for the one cause, right? And so but majority of my source of inspiration came from those two books. So
You, you
yeah
mentioned about you mentioned
yeah
about working for one cause, so everyone being aligned on a shared and common purpose. Was
yes
that is that something that you've seen less be able to achieve?
yes, because from that, so it's funny that you have a product and you have purpose of the product. the more you focus on the purpose, the more your product try to solve that purpose itself, rather than just focusing on the purpose, or sorry, on the product itself. And I think if you see from system optimization side of the less, the taking the systemic view, taking the compelling direction you want to go, that's something you want to achieve. That actually keeps me real whenever I engage with any organization. So, and it's harder for the organization to do it, especially the organizations are so siloed that they can't think out of their silo. So it is one way fascinating that using the idea of less rather than using less. I always say that the idea of less is more important, the less itself, right? If you stick to those ideas, you can go very far with the organization because it doesn't tell you too many things. It's like Scrum. We thought it is a barely sufficient. Less is again barely sufficient thing. You have to build on the more you realize what you should add to your organization. So that's why the idea of less is basically start small, and then if you think you need to build. And one of the most fascinating idea is that keep making sure that whatever the problem that you're trying to solve, you're not applying local optimization to it, so that you miss the bigger picture, or the overall optimization goal. So keeping those things in mind, say, how do I solve this problem? Keeping that I still want to build an adaptable organization, right? That way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's very similar to it's almost like listening to Boz Vodder then when you were talking, because he was saying the same when he shared his elevator pitch for less. Then it shouldn't be about, he doesn't want to be about buy this. He wants to be more about, let me understand your problems and see if less is a fit. Now, I have spoken to a number of pretty large, well-known organizations over the last month or two. And the one thing that I've said to them both is that there's no framework that's going to solve your problems. Now, given that idea, Dinesh, you're faced with a nice big potential client. You're sitting down with them, or maybe not even sitting down with them. You've bumped into them in a lift, in an elevator somewhere. And you're starting on the first floor. You're going to go up to the 50th floor because it's a big old high rise. How would you pitch less in that elevator, Dinesh?
I again is I have never pitched less to anyone. Take it this way. So I almost ask them, what exactly is their end goal? What kind of organization? And a lot of people want to say that, oh yeah, we want to be an agile organization, blah blah blah. Then you ask what exactly that means to you, right? And then if they understand agility, as we call it, adaptability, if they understand that, then we say that, hey, there are some ideas you can that can help you to move to that direction. And then I do say that, hey, I'm a certified less trainer. My inspiration has come from less, but don't look at the framework, but look at the principles behind it, and then that can help you. But if you learn those principles, why that way? And then later on, if you want to adopt framework, fine. If not, if you want to find your own way to take those learning and implement in your organization, so be it. It's less about less. It's more about the building a learning organization, an adaptable organization, if that's what you want to do. And it's not going to be easy as well. I always say that it's not something, there's no switch in any framework or any principle that would you just flip and then you will become that. It is a long, painful journey. And if you want to go towards that route, then follow these principles. If you don't want to go, you are looking for a quick win, there's no framework available that will give you a quick win. Whichever framework you go, there's nothing there. So my elevator pitch is not about less about what is the problem that you want to solve, and then can those problems be solved by following these principles or not? Because people may have different goals, right? So there's no point of saying that it's not like a one pill for every cause, right? So you, if this is the direction you want to go, probably this can help. So that's my pitches. So I think in that way you're not selling anything. You don't want to sell less. I think that probably would be a very wrong idea to sell less, because then there's no difference between any other thing that people are trying to sell. right? You have to try hard. And whereas in the whole idea of less is you generate your own insight and then find out whether it's a good idea for you.
So if I was going to play devil's advocate,
Yes.
the one thing I would say is no one ever asks what floor the other person wants to go to in an elevator pitch, which I think is just rude. I'm always, no one's like, oh, well, yeah, what floor would you like to go to? And then you know how long you've got to do your pitch. So, seriously, playing devil's advocate, if you were faced with a senior person in an organization who was on the fence about less, kind of liked what it was saying, but was a little bit unsure, and there was one thing you could say to that person, a nice thing that someone else has said, something you've observed to help kind of tip them one way or the other. Right? What is the one thing you could say to that person to maybe kind of dissuade them off of the fence?
That's a difficult question. One would I say, it all depends on their appetite. I would say experiment with one or two teams and see what happens, right? And do it properly for a month if they can afford a month and see what happens. Because to be honest, the learning is in doing it. The learning is in not talking about it. We know that people may see a pretty picture of whichever framework it is and they can get swayed by that it does solve every problem. But when you start using it, then only you know whether it is solving or not. So rather than going too far and spending too much money, if you have teams and you want to run for a month or two and just check if it works for you or not, and then you go from there. Which I'm not saying that they would see success in 2 months, but they would see what it takes for them to go to that journey itself. Because to be very honest, majority of the challenges in software product development is building product. It's not about talking about product. It's not about building the backlog. These all things influences that. The real thing is that can you build something in 10 days and show it, whatever it is, right? And then can you build that sustainably? And if you cannot do that, then it doesn't matter what framework you're doing it, using it, right? You may write pretty requirement, nice requirement, even for the 2 week. But if those can't get translated into a product, something can see and criticize it or love it, then it's useless.
Well, say useless. It might have kept people busy for a few months. Like make sure
Yes.
the devil makes work for idle hands. That's what they say, isn't it? So perhaps it stops them from, I don't know, picking their nose or doing something else unsavory. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I've been to many organizations where I have pretended that I'm working while I was not working in that case because it was so dysfunctional that you couldn't do anything. So,
Yeah. I mean,
so I have that experience as well.
and this is part of the problem, I suppose, that if then somebody was to experiment for a month and just discover that their huge monolithic application, a huge monolithic product, where you have to deploy, spend 2 days deploying this massive thing for a tiny little code change somewhere, then maybe they'll look at it and say less isn't for them. But then in that instance, you've given them the opportunity to make that decision at that point rather than selling them something that perhaps wouldn't work.
Yeah, I mean, if you're lucky in those organizations that you could deploy anything in 2 days, to be very honest, and while you're deploying, the entire product is down as well.
Yeah.
I remember joining an organization, and my first day, they were deploying something, and
They were still
it's
deploying it on your last day.
it's it's one of the largest e-commerce site in UK, and it was down for 3 days. And I literally was shocking for three, and my website was down. No could do anything. And speaking with people say, I mean, some I I remember I calling to a friend and said, "Hey, this is what's happening." I said, "Oh, looks like he." No, he called me saying, "Hey, why this? I know you joined this. Why your website is down? Have you joined the company?" I said, "Yes." So, and I was like, that was 2015, and I said, in this digital age, keeping your website down for 3 days is a crime. It should never happen again. take it this way. And but then but coming back to your question, if any experimentation help you generate more insight about the state of the organization, then you can do two things, like we say with Scrum, right? That experimentation help you to understand your problem and you want to solve those problem, or you criticize that initiative itself, that hey, why it's exposing those problems. Well, the problems were there, now you realize, and then you also realize how to solve them now. I think less would make it very, the idea of less would make it very visible for most of the organization. What are their problem? And then again, it depends on those organization to either say, oh, that doesn't work for us because we have so many problem, or they say thank you, and then let's go and solve those problems now.
And that's the some of the challenge with less and other frameworks which create a lot of transparency is it shows you some things that maybe you didn't know were there. And I
Yep.
think that sometimes the criticism that's levied at things, not just large scale Scrum, but I've had this levied at me in relation to specification by example as well, is that people turn around and say, well, this is just making things more complicated. Things were much simpler before. And the response to that was, my response to that has always been, well, it always was that complicated. It always was that
Exactly.
complex. All this is doing is showing you that and giving you the opportunity to either deal with it or just carry on. Ignorance is bliss, as they say, but
Yeah, yeah.
at least it's giving you that insight and that opportunity back. Okay, so Dinesh, what's the one thing above all others that you love about less?
I think the name itself, even though it doesn't mean, I mean, less means that keeping things simple, not adding too many things. So as we say in less, that less is about descaling, not scaling. Even though it's a large scale Scrum, but how do you scale by descaling your organization? And one thing I was reading, somebody mentioned, I think last month, that um, descaling literally means removing waste from your organization, right? Removing the waste in anything. That's what descaling is all about. I think this is what I like, is that how you keep things simple, because the more you make your organization complex because you think that you have a complex organization, you going to it's going to be very hard to deal with that complexity. So how do you keep your organization design simple to deal with complex problems? I think that's the brilliant thing about less. Is it's not about use this framework on your organization and then you will be all right. Simplify it and then see how much mileage you get out of it from there. So I think that's what I really love about less.
I suppose the secret sauce to I always get confused if it's fewer or less, but we could say either.
Yeah,
I think that the secret sauce for that is this avoidance of the reductionist thinking that I think plagues humanity. Whenever
yeah,
we're faced with something that we don't understand, we have a desire to break it down to small, easy to manage pieces. And as long as we then can manage the small pieces in some way, then we can succeed. Whereas less asks us to take a much more systemic view
yeah,
and reduce a lot of the artifacts and structures and policies, roles that come about from that reductionist thinking so we can maintain that holistic view. What I find interesting though is that another picking up on your less being the name being your favorite part is that less does have silos.
it
They're
does.
just there's just fewer of them, and they're a
Yeah,
much different from a much different school of thought. We're not specializing in the technical domain anymore. We're specializing in the customer domain,
yes.
and we are
Well,
building.
yeah. I think what we are saying, that specialize in customer domain following technical excellence. So it's not about not specializing in technical domain, but specializing in technical excellence.
Yeah,
Because as I said,
customer in the customer domain with technical excellence rather than
exactly,
technical domain and technical excellence, which just leads to
exactly.
brilliantly oiled and
Yeah,
brilliantly smoothed out cogs, but they just don't come together and
yeah,
they don't deliver any value.
yeah. And that, as you said, I think you said better than I said, that that's that organization try to use local optimization, as we call it, or reductionist approach of saying that if you break this into, it's easy to manage. So they focus on managing, not adaptability or agility, as we say, right? So I think, and this is another good thing about applying system thinking, true system thinking. I mean, you go to any other framework, they would talk about system thinking because it's obvious to everyone, right? But if you apply, how to apply it also, I think that's the beauty about um, in this the fascinating word of less, that how do you apply that system thinking to generate insight, right? Everybody would talk about system thinking, manage the whole, not manage the part, but how? And I think that's so not only that message, but also explaining how to do it as well. And how is not the framework. That's the beauty of it. How is the organization design part, or how do you build that organization design around it? So, and
Very
also
nice.
there's no perfect organization design. It's just that as long as people realize that if they have this big system optimization goal in mind, and they can start um, taking that lens to solve their problem, I think people start getting the ideas. Just an example, I run um, a workshop last week with one of the clients that I'm working with, and then they started, and they had that reductionist approach before that workshop, and they had that aha moment, say, okay, we realized what we were trying to do wrong. And it wasn't like I told them that you were wrong. It's just they realized themselves. So that how to apply system thinking is also a good thing that I think this is the first, if I know all the trainer I have worked with or the coaches that I have worked with, this is the first thing they try to do is that how to apply system thinking. Not just talk about system thinking, but how do you use it in the organization. I think that's a really good way to start the conversation in an organization to generate their own insight.
Thank you very much. I really like your answer to the thing you love about less, which is the name less. It was nice. A little bit different than other people's, which are testament to your mind, Dinesh. So, two more questions on less itself before we move on to the slightly more broader agile questions.
Mhm.
Question number 4. And you may have alluded to this earlier, but if you can just let us know for sure, what was or is your favorite less adoption?
Yeah, I think my best or favorite less adoption was CETA one, because there I could experiment with pretty much all the ideas in less, right? The organization design, starting small, growing, multi-site, offshore, bringing customer in, building long-lasting relationship with your supplier, um, and also following on technical excellence. And that was when there was not much help available apart from those two books. So I think it was beautiful because we had less prescription, more ideas. So we say, oh, let's try this idea, whether it works or not. And it was almost like, even when I used to take the ideas to the team, I had no clue about those ideas much, because those were the few, those were the things that in fact, I have read first time. I say, hey, this is what I like it. I never mentioned this. This is what has written in the book. Then we should do it. It's like say, hey, what do you think about that? And so CETA was a good um, transformation.
And this
Um,
is your case study on the
yes.
less.works site as well, which I will put a link to into the show notes so it's easily accessible for people.
It's
I'm
funny thing
assuming
about case. Sorry, it's funny thing about the case study, because when I was writing case study, because we had done so many things, I was advised to focus on only one thing, and that's why we have put the. I mean, like every other case study, not to make it too generic, just go deeper, narrow and deeper on one topic. But there was other element of it also, like customer centricity. We didn't go deeper into it. Technical excellence, we didn't go too much deeper into it. And how to create a transparent. I mean, not to use too many tools. When we were there, when we were actually when I was in CETA, we had a very big room, and every team was in that big room, like a hall, right? and we had a space where everything was visualized. So nobody asked status ever. They just went to the board if they want to see anything, or they saw the product. So the transparency was so much that if we have 200 defects, it was there on the wall that we have 200 defects, right? If it was that our build is broken, everybody knew our build is broken, right? So that it was so people were not saying what's going on. Most of the discussion was that what are we doing about it, which was good thing. So my boss used to say that previously I used to ask for the information to my software development manager or my BAs and everything. Now I just won't walk across the room. It's like we say Gamba walk, right? And I pretty much know everything. And anything I don't know, I go figure out, hey, what's going on there, and I can ask people. And then I can if I think I can help them, I can help them also. Previously, information was coming to me. Now I'm going too closer to the information. Take it this way. So I think that's the beauty of it. That not it's just not the bottom up, but it was top down as well.
And did you have some good Scrum Masters at CETA?
When we start, when we started, we did not have any Scrum Master, right? Literally, people went to Scrum Master, so they were like a typical development manager. They went to a Scrum Master course. They came back and naively said, "I'm not responsible for anything from today," right? So it was like everything team has to do it. I don't have to do anything because it's just like they were responsible for everything, right? But then gradually they realize that their responsibility is now even greater to make teams successful rather than themselves successful, right? So we built good Scrum Master there. Very fortunate to have those open-minded people. They struggle. I mean, everybody struggled initially in the learning, but they were courageous to take that path as well.
Very good. Right. Final last question. If you could change one thing about less, and I mean less in the overloaded sense of the term, so we are talking less huge rules, guides, experiments, the whole principles, whole shebang. If you could change one thing, what would that one thing be?
If I could change one thing, I think one thing, the as much as I like Scrum, the idea that less has this Scrum word embedded into it, and the way the whole Scrum itself being bastardized going forward, if we had not choose the word Scrum in the less itself, because suddenly people think it's all about Scrum, right? So I think if that, um, because if you are associated yourself with Scrum, you have an external dependency, and if that gets redefined, you have a problem now that whether you want to stick to the core idea of Scrum or the way it is marketed now, right? And I'm not saying Scrum is bad, but the way it's going forward is being mis sold, take it this way. I think that probably is that's the one downside I see it, that it is coupled with Scrum, and less doesn't have any control over it.
Yeah, it
We,
was a, but it was a tight coupling, which I suppose made sense when it didn't look like there was going to be ever be a really meaningful Scrum version
yeah,
2. But I would go to some extent and argue that the new version of a Scrum guide is like a Scrum 2.0. And just because it's a new version doesn't mean it's better. Sequels are often worse than the
yeah,
originals.
yeah, often, yeah, you're right, yeah, yeah,
Terminator. Well, no, that's not true. Terminator 2 was pretty good. Empire
yeah, but
Strikes Back. That was
but
really good.
but even if you see the Scrum now, it's probably Scrum 5.0. when
I was
when
trying to
last
I was trying
when,
to get you to talk about films and Dinesh, like you just keep on with Scrum.
yeah, yeah, I have not liked many sequels, right? Because it's built up on something and then you want to improve rather than having the original idea around it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, after a while, it does become. I think it again depends where purpose of the Scrum itself, whether it
Mm.
is if you generalize too much, then you don't get anything out of it. It's like a the law of raspberry jam. You want to use for everything, and then whereas initially it was for product development, software product development. Now, if you want to sell it so that people can use in HR also, then it's a problem. It's just that we're trying to say that it is the solution for everything, which loses value. So I think that's again I said that I like Scrum, the idea of Scrum itself. The way I say the idea of less, the same way I say idea of Scrum, right?
I mean,
And
I think it's a shame that they couldn't have come up with an acronym around fewer. I think it would probably cause a few less tense conversations in less trainings if you could just say, well, no, it's fewer. It's not
true,
less.
yeah.
And you mentioned the law of raspberry jam. So a quick pop quiz. Where who is the author that coined the term, Dinesh?
Who was it? Who was it? Okay, you put me on
I
spot
asked you
now.
because I thought you were just going to know. I didn't mean to
No, no,
stitch you up.
no. It's just that I'm not very good in remembering English names. Take it this way.
Well,
Weinsberg? What was the name, guy? No,
yeah,
isn't there? Yeah,
Weinberg, Jerry
yeah, Weinberg. Yeah,
Weinberg.
Jerry Weinberg. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
His book, is it in the Secrets of
Of
Consulting? I
consulting. Yeah,
think,
secret of
which
consulting. Yeah.
I purchased for Saloni when she went solo again at some point. I bought it for her as a
Okay.
present because I thought she
Okay.
needed some help. So Saloni, so thank you very much for that.
No
And
problem.
I would agree. I would agree. Maybe if less could just get rid of the Scrum thing, then maybe it would simplify it. But I think there's a
Yeah,
really
it's
interesting,
the word, not the idea. Take it again. Say
yeah, yeah,
idea of Scrum is
the
bigger for you.
original,
Yeah,
the original essence of it. And I
essence of
think
it.
that's
Yeah,
part of the problem with the new version of the Scrum Guide. Is it's kind of attacked the essence. It's polluted the
yeah.
porridge that was the essence of Scrum. I feel
True.
it's just kind of it's like it's like a porridge or soup. Once you put something in there, you can't really take it back out again.
No.
Not unless it's like I don't know a whole carrot or something. Seasoning and the rest of it. You can't take it out. And I think that's what's
Yeah.
happened. I think Scrum has slowly been the Scrum, the porridge of Scrum essence has slowly been polluted with other factors which are just inextractable now. So I
Yeah.
think that maybe there's time for something new, or at least a divergence. But that's a topic for another conversation. So, Dinesh, last two questions,
Yes.
and these ones are about agile in general. What is something in the agile world that you think should have been bigger, more popular than it was or is?
I may be biased here, but I would say extreme programming. I think the entire agile movement, not especially the engineering part, has to be core of everything. I don't. I think it is not successful because it's a brilliant idea. I mean, uh, and it is probably something XP practitioner can learn from Scrum how to popularize an idea. I think that's what would we do because most of the organization are suffering because of that. They are not using those things. Right? So I think that would be the one thing that I wish was much more popular. I wish it was taught in computer science directly there. So when people are coming out of it, they are prepared for it. It's too late because they have built up so many ideas, and so if it should be added into education system of computer scientists saying that learn this how to build the products from there,
Yeah.
right? Properly.
I
I
wonder
think,
if in primary schools in the UK and worldwide they teach children a lot of coding.
yeah,
I wonder if they would get them pair programming. I reckon kids would get a kick
yeah,
out of that kind of teamwork. I think that this is part of the problem, though, isn't it? With techniques like pair programming and XP, which is big on collaborating and talking to people, all through the educational systems. It's mostly
yeah,
focused on how intelligent you are as an individual. It's about the smartest kid in school, not
yeah,
how well you're able to get along with others. Should you ever end up in a conversation with other parents and it all turns into this slightly competitive thing where, oh well, my child can, do long division, and
yeah,
my child's on this level reading book. Oh, my child's written his first novel, and like, do you know what, parents? I'm really sorry. Most of that doesn't really matter because unless your child can actually get along with other people and have a certain level of emotional intelligence, then like the research, if your child was that clever, he would have read the research
true,
on the effect of emotional intelligence for your chances of succeeding in later life. And I think this is this, I don't know. Maybe my thing is what should have been bigger in the agile world was actual collaboration. But I think with all of these things, you're right. by the time we hit industry, it's too late. People have been taught these things and been brought up in a certain way, and it's hard to come back from that.
Yeah. I mean, we can have another debate about the education system itself, because the
Yeah.
education system prepares to pass the test rather than to learn at the moment, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe
So
there's
that,
a conversation that we can get scheduled in with some of the other less trainers around. Do we want a test for a certified less practitioner? What would it prove?
yeah,
Do we need more? Should there be more less courses?
yeah,
Answers on a postcard, please. Maybe
yeah,
we can pick that one up
yeah.
another time. Okay. Next question, final
Mhm.
agile question. Anyway, what do you think? Now, you might have better answer this, but do you have any gut feel as to what might be the next big thing?
Oh, in general,
Yeah, just globally. Now, in the agile world,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
is there something that you've heard of or seen, got a sniff of that you think might be the next big thing in the agile world?
Just give me a second. In the agile world, I don't think there would be as such a different big thing in agile world, because the idea of agile is very simple. So, um, but in general, I think that, and we are seeing it, the uh, the machine learning, the artificial intelligence of that, I think that would revolutionize the way the world moves. I mean, if you see, we see nowadays just in computer science, but if you go, sorry, in Tesla has popularized it, right, in car world, but if you go in health industry, I think it would have a massive influence there. And I think and also I think a lot of people do not realize that most of the practice of the principle of agile gets applied in other industry anyway. So if you go and see, because I have worked in hospitals, a few hospitals, even after my first job, I see that how much doctor collaborate with each other, right? I know my wife is from chemistry background, and then she talks about a lot of things, that a lot of idea gets solved by um, in chemistry world, right? The idea, they collaborated a lot with biologists and physicists to solve those ideas. So that's cost functionalism is there anyway. I think it will get stronger and stronger, right? So um, I think again, the big idea in agile world is going back and to more towards XP again. I would say that the more it get there. I mean, pair programming has moved to more programming nowadays. So that people to realize that it is how valuable it is, the teams that have practiced it. So I don't think the idea of agile. I mean, people are not even following those 12 principles and 4 values nowadays. So I don't know if they start following that. That would be a big idea. Take it this way.
The next big thing is going to be the Agile Manifesto.
Manifesto, yeah.
We're going to go full circle.
Yeah, yeah.
Or maybe, maybe it will be. Maybe people will actually understand what the word principles mean and values mean, and will be less open to interpretation, perhaps. Who knows? Dinesh, thank you very much for your answers and for taking the time to go through them all with me. It's been brilliant. It's been so nice to get to talk to you in a slightly more formal setting. So
Yeah, no
thank you
problem.
very much for being a willing participant, Dinesh.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, people might want to know where to find you, or if you have or how to contact you. And I'll put all this information in the show notes, but do you want to share with the world a little bit about how they can contact you should they wish to?
I'm on LinkedIn, so I think if you search on Dinesh Sharma, I'm the first one comes in. I don't know why, but I have the one there. I'm there, and you can contact me through there. I have a website, agilegurukul.com. You can reach out me through there and contact me. My address is dinesh at agilegurukul.com. So yeah, that's what it is. And yeah, I don't know why people would like to contact me, but if they want to, they would find me on LinkedIn. I think that's the easiest way to contact me.
LinkedIn normally is. I'm sure there's some people who want to talk to you, Dinesh. I'm sure there will be. I'm sure there will be. Dinesh's case study is fantastic. The CETA case study on the LESS website. It's well worth checking out, and I'll put that in the show notes. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen or to watch this. It's really appreciated. We'll end it there.
Well, one
Dinesh,
thing before
oh,
before
go
we
on,
end,
Dinesh.
yeah, before one and I would say again formally, many thanks for your mentorship to help me to become a less trainer. I struggled initially before you were my mentor. You don't know probably that I was first of very few people was contacted if I want to be a less trainer, and I sit on it for 2 years not doing anything until he assigned me to you to say that hey, sort out Dinesh, and then you helped me to um, become a less trainer. So I would like to say thank you for that as well. I've never
Dinesh,
said that openly, but I really appreciate your help with
thank you. I might edit that out. I'm joking.
that. Don't, please don't.
I won't. I'm far too vain for that.
Yeah.
My longest standing memory of our about the mentoring was the day you bought me crispy fried colettes, and they were delicious.
You
Colettes are a mixture between Brussels sprouts and kale, and ever since that day, whenever I get the opportunity, and they always remind me of you. I can even remember the taste, like it's just stuck with me. Nothing about the conversations,
no.
all about the crispy colettes. I'm joking.
So it's always about food anyway, right?
It really is. For me, particularly, it's always about food. Anyway, Dinesh, thank you so much for your kind words.
No problem.
Mentoring is a relationship. So it was, it was a good pairing. It was a good pairing. Thank you.
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
And yeah, and thanks everyone for listening. You will be hearing from us again quite soon.